Hello, friends and beautiful people. Happy Friday. It is Kathryn and I'm, Elevated Consciousness Coach, 5D Visionary. It is all things Ascension, and we are on episode 11. And today we're going to talk about your inner journey is your outward projection. And I have a lot to say about this. It's timely. I guess this kind of information always is. And important, crazy important. And hopefully this is really going to help to bring some information into you guys that you've been really asking for. Some clarity and maybe a deeper understanding and perspective on how energy, frequency, and vibration informs our human experience, but not just on an individual level, but on a collective level as well. And that it's just so important for us to understand that everything is consciousness, and everything is a fragment or an expression of consciousness, and it all informs each other. This is a really important thing to bring home in times where there feels like a lot of collective chaos. There's always an opportunity for greater discernment there and greater understanding. Instead of just hoping for the best. It's important to understand that there are bigger themes happening, and we have to pull back our lens of perception in order to get that lens nice and clear for ourselves. So a couple announcements real quick. There is 3 weeks left before we begin the Quantum Quintessence Society. This is going to be a 16-week container of growth. A lot of information, but a lot of practice, very experiential and eye-opening information that is practical and tangible and applicable to your life. And we're going to be studying 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th dimensional awareness in a really highly supportive container. And there's going to be things that come in about different dimensional awareness that maybe you hadn't thought about. We're going to talk about 5D in a way that a lot of people don't talk about 5D. I'm going to be putting out a post today that's going to be a little bit of a teaser for that. That starts on March 11th. There are plenty of spots open. This is a 16-week program. We're going to be together over 4 months. We meet once a week on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time, starting March 11th. I will put the link in the comments to read more about that. When you join that program, you will have access to my new book, which is Notes on Ascension, that comes out on March 30th. You can also buy this. It's going to be available as a Kindle ebook on Amazon that you can buy for $9.99. I will be publishing a hard copy of it. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I've put that out to the universe that the right situation will come around for me to do that. I have other books that I've written. I have 2 other books that I've written. They are only available as ebooks, but I want a hard copy for this one because this book, Notes on Ascension, is going to be like a primer. Hello to everyone who's here. I can't see the comments and who's here. It's meant to be like a primer in a handbook, Notes on Ascension. So that comes out on March 30th. If you're in my Quantum Quintessence Society, you get that book as part of the course. So we're being invited always and ever to focus on our human-ness. Because our human body is the only filter for this experience in this lifetime. Hi, David. We have no other way of making, what we do, what we explore, what we can know, what we can discover. We have no other way of making that tangible other than to have this filter of our human body, our humanness. This is the filter for our experience and is the vessel to ground our connection to higher realms of consciousness that we're reaching for, that we're desiring to explore. There is no other way that we can ground or filter or understand or disseminate some way in those experiences with higher realms other than to have a body. Okay? So the body is everything. Our human experience really is everything. And there seems to be this is a trend that's going away, thank goodness. But there's an erroneous trend to want to disregard or even disrespect or disenfranchise ourselves from the human body when we feel like we're reaching a higher frequency, that somehow the body is lesser than. And our elevated experience and our knowing of those realms, or our accessing of the frequency of higher realms, is everything. And it somehow, in doing that, has discounted our human experience. This is never the case. This is never the case. You could have incarnated as a lot of different stuff. You could have incarnated as pretty much anything, anywhere, on a different planet, in a different galaxy, in a different star system, in a different dimensional layer. Okay? But you came here. You either were chosen, you were selected, you decided to incarnate as human. Everything is consciousness. Everything is consciousness. You, as a human vessel, holding the energetic frequency and signature that is you, you have chosen this container. You chose what kind of body you wanted to have. You chose what kind of experiences you were going to have in this lifetime as well. Some of us get help when we go through our learning school in between lifetimes. You know, sometimes we get a lot of help. We have a spirit team that helps us decide what we're going to do, or what we're going to live through, have the experience of, download the information of. And the human experience here in 3D is really quite unique, because we have a spectrum of emotional experience here that doesn't really exist in this way in other star systems, planets, dimensional layers even. It's very unique, this 3D experience. And although many of us are coming into this awareness now that it is very unique, but it has brought us maybe a lot of pain. It has brought us a lot of inner division and a lot of interpersonal and personal crises in our lives, and we think this human experience has been something to be discounted. But it has always been what we're asking for. The upheaval or the trigger event is always the catalyst for supplying us with what we ask to experience here. Everything is consciousness, okay? So everything. This pen is consciousness. Does it have a conscience? No, that's different. But it is consciousness. Because everything in energy, anything in the energetic field is overlapping. Everything informs everything else. So consciousness as a whole can't exist without all of the explicate parts of it, meaning all the individuated expressions of consciousness feed the entirety or the whole of what consciousness is. So everything is consciousness. Your vibration as a human being is creating the physicality of your experience. And it is this physicality of your experience and everything that comes with that is allowing you to be a fragment or an expression of consciousness that is feeding the whole. It's feeding everything else. So in a way, you know, we're very unique. We're very important. But in a way also, you know, we're just one thread of this incredible tapestry that we call consciousness that informs the whole. So we're just as important as everything else, right? We're all also, as well as being threads of individuated consciousness, we are all walking, talking bipolar magnetic fields. We have the ability to translate frequency, vibration, energy into form, because we are creator beings in this 3D realm. We are, as humans, the keepers of 3D. And so we are the manifestors here. We have created this reality. And it is because through our unique energetic signature, our electromagnetic signature, that we take the raw material of frequency and we translate it into form. We do this through the vibration of who we are, through our thoughts and our feelings. Our thoughts are electric in nature, and our feelings are magnetic. So the thoughts are what cast out a net to the universe or the creational field of all of consciousness, and our feelings are what magnetizes the physicality of that manifested form back to us. Okay? We're all walking, talking bipolar magnetic fields. And we perceive and filter polarized states of being all the time. So if that is true, that we are these walking bipolar magnetic fields, and we perceive and filter polarized states of being all the time, that means we're constantly aware of, whether we're fully conscious of it is another thing, but we're always on an energetic level fully aware of, we can make this choice or we can make that one. But it's the electromagnetic signature of our energy, of our thoughts and feelings that attracts a manifested physical reality. So this is 100% true all the time. I'll say that again. It's the electromagnetic signature of you, meaning your thoughts and your feelings that are correct, they're creating the vibration of you and holding it in this unique vessel that is your human form. It's always this electromagnetic signature of our energy, of our thoughts and feelings that attracts a manifested physical reality. This is true whether we're creating on an individual level or for the collective. And it's not exclusive and it's not a vacuum. If we are creating individually, we are also creating collectively. If we are creating collectively, we're also creating individually, because remember, it's all part of the field of consciousness. Everything overlaps and informs everything else that is consciousness. This is the nature of energy, vibration, and frequency in general. And this is 100% true all the time, that we're choosing through our own electromagnetic signature from these bipolarized fields. You could call it good or bad, black or white, whatever it is, okay? We are making that choice between those things. There is a huge gradient in between because the spectrum of emotion creates the anchor in either one spectrum of the other, or good or bad. But we have a lot of different variables between, a lot of gray areas, let's just say, between the black and the white of those polarized forms. Law of one, yes, and the law of polarity, right? So this is 100% true all the time that we're choosing. So that means that what we call this physical reality, it is changeable, it is malleable, it is not fixed. A lot of times we've created our reality and our personal identity around, I'm always this, I'm never that, right? Which are very reductive in nature. And that kind of language about the nature of our experience is what anchors the level of experience. Our perception creates our conception, in other words, okay? I'm never that, I'm always this. We have to be very careful with the language we use to describe our experience, because then it becomes our manifested physical reality, okay? But what we're doing when we say, I'm always this, I'm never that, that is rather reductive, but it is a subjective experience. And a subjective experience is always changeable. It's never fixed. It can change based on our sovereign free agency. In other words, it can change based on our ability to choose our experiences or choose to respond to our experiences differently. We can choose how we want to experience what we desire to have. We can choose how to experience trigger events that catalyze a certain way of feeling for us. We can always change that response because we have sovereign free agency. So just as you and your unique electromagnetic signature of who you are is a point of attention in the fabric of all of consciousness, in the unending field of all of consciousness, so is a collective, okay? The human collective, the human family, is also a point of attention. It is a collective body or energetic signature that is a point of attention in the field of all of consciousness. You are never not a part of that. You are never not creating something or funding or investing your energy in that collective energetic body of the human family. So in other words, we have a collective vibration that is also not static or fixed and subjective. And just like your energetic vibration, who you are has to shift and change because that's a nature of experiencing contrast in the 3D time-space reality. The human group collective, it's also not static or fixed. It has to shift, it has to change, it has to vacillate. It has life, it has vibrancy. It is always going through bipolarized fields of contrast also. So we have trigger events that catalyze these shifts, and they happen a lot. And why do we need these catalyzing events? Well, we need them in our own life to experience contrast so that we can learn how to choose differently, drop anchor in a different vibrational being, right? We need to do that as a collective too. So quite frankly, to learn how to make better choices that serve the highest good of the collective, because that's why we're here. We have these trigger events, these catalyzing opportunities for us to choose differently. These catalyzing events, they create upheaval in the human group, the human family, this point of attention that is the human collective. So that's why being on this planet is so powerful. We're here to remember our way back to our own divinity. And the only way we can do that is through catalyzing events that throw up a great deal of contrast, that make us choose between those bipolarizing fields. Consciousness moves. It goes up and down. So when you think about our journey of ascension, not only for you individually, but for the human collective, we are ascending as a collective as well. Imagine it's a spiral. Imagine when we are making better choices as a collective for the highest good of all, that this spiral ascends upward, okay? When we are not, as a collective, making the best and highest choices for the good of all, we are on a descending, a de-evolution of that spiral, okay? And it's always moving and shifting. It's always going up or down based on where the tipping point of mass consciousness is, okay? Frankly, we're here to learn how to make better choices that serve the highest good. So when we're doing that as a collective, and it's a tipping point of mass consciousness where most of the planet is doing that, we are on our way upwards in that ascension spiral, making more God choices. And when we are making the God choices, meaning when we respond to these catalyzing trigger events, then we are thinking about the highest good of all, the highest and best good for you, the highest and best good of all, and with the least amount of resistance for all involved. That's the God choice. That is unity consciousness in principle and practice, okay? Consciousness moves, it goes up and down. And based off of whether we're making more God choices as a tipping point of mass consciousness versus not, will allow us to either go up on that ascension spiral or down, okay? And just as you are individually moving towards your highest good, your highest and best desired potential in this lifetime, and you're discovering, hopefully, different ways how to choose differently in responding to and evaluating life's experiences, we're also doing this as a human family, as a collective. So think about every time you do that for yourself. Maybe you have a pattern that you've become aware of in your life. And patterns are really important to discover, and I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail in a moment. But maybe you've discovered a pattern that has emerged many times in your life, and it's dictated to you who you think you are based on this pattern. And let's just say this pattern is not aligned with your highest good, okay? I want you to also think about, if it's not aligned with your highest good, chances are it's not aligned with the highest good of all. And chances are there's some resistance there. And if anyone else was to be in your shoes and experience that as well, there would be some resistance for that person as well. Why? Because resistance simply is not being in alignment with Source. It is our natural state to be in alignment with pure Source consciousness. Anything else is a false timeline. Anything else is a false paradigm of being. Anything else is you out of alignment with Source. So maybe you've witnessed this pattern. You're finally able to see it in high contrast because it's maybe being delivered to you now because you're in a perspective now that you haven't had before. Maybe you've accessed a certain frequency of being where you can see things about this pattern that maybe you just weren't privy to before. You were in a lower level of awareness. You were in a lower vibrational state of being. So it just didn't come up for you. And now you're seeing, I can respond differently to this pattern. And when you respond differently to a pattern, you hack it. Essentially, you dissolve it and collapse it. So Why do bad things happen to good people? This is rolled up into our understanding of, if you're making better choices for yourself, you're going to be making better choices for the collective. I invite you to take a deep breath before I start talking about this, because this is gonna pull you out of your point of attention of awareness for where you're in right now. No matter where you're in, this is going to give you a bigger sense of what's really going on. At least I hope so. So you think, okay, if I'm creating the level of my experience through what I perceive, and I'm willing to change my subjective experience of how I respond to events and things in my own life, I can see how that is creating kind of a vibe that, yes, ripples out or gets downloaded into the collective. That's creating the level of experience, meaning the things that I see, the things that I'm involved in, the things that come up in my daily life. I can be diligent on working on that for myself. But how do you explain when things happen in the collective, and there might be many, many good people where bad things are happening to them? Okay? Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, if we're looking at that through the filter of the collective, a good person, a pure soul, one who is committed to making God choices, one who is willing to be subject to certain dramas in their life, but they're committed to a unique purity in their signature, their resonance of being. It's those people and their energy that is needed to offset exploring the contrast of the bipolarized aspect of a certain trigger event that happens in the collective. You can look at things like war, or when bad things happen to children, or what's happening in the US right now with, in Texas, a lot of people being without power, without heat, without warmth, without their basic needs for survival being met. Okay? So arguably that's a bad situation to be in, and arguably all those people in that situation are not bad people. So if we are connecting to the vibration of our experience through our own electromagnetic signature, why would a good person making God choices be in a place where they're attracting something bad to them? Because those folks who are committed to a purity of being, a purity of resonance, and making the God choices, that which is highest and best for them, highest and best for all, and with the least amount of resistance for all involved, it is their energy that's needed to offset a tipping point towards the dark side of that situation continuing to play out. Their energy is needed to offset a collective tipping point of a downward spiral that the human family is involved in. In other words, their vibration is needed to elevate awareness at a time when there is a human pattern evolving that is not serving the highest good of all. These are the people who are operating within a spectrum of frequency where they are aware that there are choices. They're aware that some choices just serve the collective better. You see it all the time. When bad things happen, there's those people who show up and shovel people out of their house and driveway. They show up for the elderly and bring them a hot plate of food. They're going and giving, lots of donations of winter coats or, gallons of water to people who don't have it. These are the people that I'm talking about, okay? These are the people who are operating within a spectrum of frequency where they are aware that even in the worst of situations, there are still choices that serve the highest collective good. And through their example, they download to other beings in the human family that there is a high road to take, always. And it is a choice, or choices that allow for our spiral of ascension to move upward again instead of downward. And if enough people enact the God choice in this way, it creates a tipping point of consciousness that alters reality for the better. And what is mostly unfolding in the human collective right now are patterns held in the human consciousness. They're just patterns. They seem to be escalating, but really what's happening is they are patterns emerging in high contrast, meaning they're coming up so big that we can't deny that they're there. They're coming up in such high contrast, so we can finally see them from the higher perspective, hopefully, that most of us have attained. A lot of us have attained more and more all the time. We're waking up, elevating into a higher frequency vibration of being, right? And we're in this higher perspective. We can see things we didn't see before, meaning we can see patterns that they were not in our line of sight before. We weren't in a vibrational spectrum where we could grasp that and see it. And this is allowing us from this higher perspective and seeing this patterning come up in such high contrast that we can't deny it. We're also in a higher perspective or frequency that we have the ability to know that we can make higher God choices, even in the most difficult of situations. And we can do it for ourselves, but we're also doing it for the planet. This is unity consciousness in principle and practice. And so it all starts with your own inner journey. If we're looking at it, we pulled the lens way out here, but let's reverse engineer it. This always and ever starts with your own inner journey. Your own inner journey of awareness of how you handle difficult themes in your own life. What feelings do you have about yourself in this moment? How does that translate to feelings you may have about your worldview or this planet and the people on it at large? It's really important to start looking at how these two might conflate and translate and inform each other. Is there an emotion that is a pattern for you that anchors these views about your life and feelings about being part of the human family at large? In other words, how are you feeling about yourself that is informing the energy of the collective? Notice your emotional responses to these questions and realize you have a choice to respond differently. The way you choose to experience an event, individually or collectively, will determine how destiny unfolds from that event forward. And this is directly from my spirit team when I was sitting with this information before this talk today. Destiny, fate, it's just a pattern. People say, well, do you believe in destiny or do you believe in free will? It's both. Destiny and fate, it's just a pattern. But we have wiggle room within the pattern always because we have free agency of choice. So when we find ourselves in an individual pattern, we find ourselves in a collective pattern, do you see how they're really not any different? And we have sovereign free agency. That means we have the ability to choose differently, to change destiny, to change fate, to change the pattern, because that's all destiny is. It's just a pattern. And another way to think about that and reverse this back to your individuated experience, your expectations in life are your pattern. They're your destiny. Your expectations in this life, that's your pattern. And then that's your destiny. So you can change your expectations and they will make you feel differently. And when you feel differently, you remove the anchor that fixes your destiny. This is true individually and this is true collectively because they inform each other. They are energies that overlap. They can't not. So I invite you to sit with this and think about this for a bit. And maybe journal about these questions. I'll say them again. What feelings do you have about yourself at this moment, right now? Because that's all there is now. How does that translate to feelings you have about your worldview at large? Where does that cross over? Where are ways maybe you didn't think about how that crossed over? Give yourself the space and the grace to explore this and investigate a little deeper here. Is there an emotion that is a pattern for you that anchors these views that you have about your life and feelings about being part of the human family at large? Notice your emotional responses to these questions and realize that you have sovereign free agency, meaning the ability to choose differently. to respond differently. And when we do that so much on an individual level, we create that mass tipping point of consciousness that allows us to move into unity consciousness, to occupy a higher octave, a higher harmonic for the collective of the human family. This is possible. This is a probable timeline that I see all the time. It's there. And if we can imagine it, it exists. And if we can imagine it as a collective, we also download to each other through our DNA, to the rest of the human family, that this is a timeline that's not only probable, it exists. It exists and it's ready to be fully occupied and be the next point of attention for the human family that creates the alteration of consciousness as we've known it. I'm going to leave it right there. I want to thank all of you who have been here live with me to sit in with this talk. Thank you for lending your beautiful vibration to this. And I want to wish you so much love and peace. Bye-bye.